Best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick your check. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome back, DFS Army. This is FantasyFling. We are taking another look at the DraftKings Milly Maker and some MME Strategy. Hopefully this week I will not have any audio issues as I did last week, but let's get into it. All right, so we're going to start with the Milly Maker write-up that I write every week at dfsarmy.com. I tweet this out at FantasyFling on Twitter. If you're not following me, give me a holler as I tweet this out as soon as I write it. So last week, it was kind of a foreshadowing with that Buffalo and Cleveland game getting moved to Detroit because of the snow. Over like 6 feet of snow in 24 hours. Just was nuts. Kind of a foreshadowing of the overall slate because there were snowflakes everywhere. If you looked at your GPP lineups and specifically a lot of the pros, I couldn't find a single pro that had a positive ROI in the Milly Maker. Just a very low scoring slate. And as you can see here, the total 197 points. That's the lowest we've had in over 2 years of for at least for me looking at the Milly Maker 2020, 2021, and 2022. The lowest I think I found was like 209 points. So extremely low for a large field GPP like the Milly Maker. What took this down obviously was a stack with Jacoby Brissett, Amari Cooper, and I'll bring back with Devin Singletary. So Tony Pollard was exceptional, amazing play, leverage play. He's 39 points. Cordarrelle Patterson didn't do a whole lot, but still made his way there in, didn't really contribute a whole lot to the group project, but still got an A. T. Higgins, 26 points. Obviously Cooper, Michael Pittman Jr., 13.5. Tyler Conklin, 3.5. Devin Singletary, 17.7. And then Washington defense getting a pick 6 really was the difference maker. From this defense, it was pretty low owned and expensive. So 19 points, that's what you look for in a defense. And then the primary stack, obviously, was Jacoby Brissett, Amari Cooper, and Devin Singletary. This combined for 81 points and total stacking ownership. As we get into the ownership aspect of it, very, very low. But we have talked about this. As you will notice, this is a skinny stack, right? Quarterback +1 and a bring back. There was no secondary stacks. When the scores are low, the skinny stacks are in play. They will dominate the lineups. If you can really properly predict a low scoring slate, if you see a lot of low totals and you don't see a lot of paths of them going over, you could certainly leverage the field with skinny stacks and contrarian plays because skinny stacks and lower ownership will be what takes down the large field GPPs in low scoring weeks. So this lineup had a plentiful amount of both, despite its lack of a lot of points. And then, there's certainly a correlation between higher scores and more stacking, lower scores and less stacking. So it is the one constant in GPPs, and skinny contrarian stack this week was able to get it done. So this 3-player stack really was just awesome from several points. Perspective just of direct leverage. When you look at Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs being chalk in that game, fantasy points per dollar, and then just overall ceiling. So, what you're kind of looking for is 27.7 points on average to hit a 250-point target to win a large field GPP like the Milly Maker. So the 27.2 points here is exactly the average you're looking for across 9 positions. to hit that, and it hit it. And then ownership was extremely low. So direct leverage in this was, as far as total ownership, there was a lot to be had. 38% total ownership for this lineup. Now, the top one, obviously, Jacoby Brissett. This is going to be a top leverage play of less than 1%. Tony Pollard, 5%. Cordarrelle Patterson, 13%. T. Higgins, 14%. Amari Cooper, 3%. Michael Pittman, 4.5%. Tyler Conklin, 5%. Singletary, 11%. And Washington defense, 6%. So this lineup was extremely low ownership, which is quite different than what we had seen recently, because we had seen over a month of it being 158% average. So this was more about the contrarian bros having their day. As you know, we alluded to, this was going to come because in the past 2 years, we've seen 96% total ownership, 108% total ownership. We knew that most weeks the ownership's going to be low to win a large field GPP. So the chalk smash for a while, but this was back in low ownership territory. So Jacoby Brissett, you could make an argument he was the top leverage play on the slate at under 1% ownership and over 5.5x the salary. He was direct leverage off of chalky Josh Allen. Mark Cooper, just incredible leverage as well. He was one half of that leverage stack, really, with him and Brissett. Only 2 points behind Adams for the best wide receiver score on the slate. And, it's kind of funny because a lot of people are just starting to avoid Amari Cooper because he's been so poor on the road. His home splits have been good, but his road splits have been bad. But he didn't have any problems this week, which is kind of like, regardless of the trend, you got to be willing to go back and, have a leverage play like that. And that's probably why he was so low owned, even though the matchup was really good. So Washington defense, that was a great leverage play. Obviously, we want low owned defenses going against young quarterbacks, bad teams. We want to be on the positive side of variance. And then Tony Pollard, top scoring player on the slate, 5% owned. For me, he was a top leverage play. Hard to tell if this was a late swap or not, because I do know, a lot of DFS Army players. Kevin Allen said it in his channel. I personally late swapped to Higgins and Tony Pollard, and did well in some small field GPPs because of it. So I know he was a great late swapping option. Hard to tell with this lineup because we didn't see it from the very beginning, and there being no stack in it kind of makes you wonder if this was a late swap, because a lot of times you will have, some secondary stacks. So hard to tell, but regardless, great leverage play. And this is why you utilize late swap. So pricing and value. So from a value standpoint, what really made this lineup was a Jacoby Cooper Singletary stack that scored 81 points and really only averaged 5,800 salary. So when you have expensive, chalky stacks like Diggs, Allen, and then 7,600 Fields, that the Fields was all over, and 21% owned, $8,900 Barkley, this lineup really hit it out of the value park from a value standpoint by avoiding those pricey landmines. So when you can pay down at quarterback with Jacoby as opposed to paying up for the chalky options, and then the pay down hits, and that, the top options do not provide that 4x tournament winning upside. These lineups with the low price quarterback are really tough to beat. And obviously this is why it made it to the top of the leaderboard. So, 197 points, obviously really low. And as far as stealing, one of the things I want to say is in regards to the overall trends of the 2022 season, we've seen 6 weeks with less than a quarterback +2. So 5 weeks, at least a quarterback +2, and normally a bringback or several bringbacks have won the Milly Maker, but 6 weeks. So now over half the time we've seen a quarterback +1, maybe a bringback, some secondary stacks, but mainly, the primary has been a quarterback +1. So something to keep in mind moving forward. So now let's take a look at the MME strategy portion of the show. So we're going to, like I said, I went through the rotor grindings leaderboards, and, I went down a ways here just looking for any of these guys that really had a positive ROI in the Milly, and they all had a negative ROI. So we're going to look at the top ones and kind of see their strategy, but obviously, it didn't quite work out. But nonetheless, we can see what their thought process was. We can kind of depict that a little bit from some of these top guys. So Chipotle Addict, we'll start with him. So he had Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox, and Njoku and Donovan Peoples-Jones. So pretty heavy stack. Josh Allen +2, and then brought back with 2 players. So, but just a very low lineup because obviously the side of this game that went off was Amari Cooper. So you needed Jacoby Brissett and Amari Cooper. Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs didn't come anywhere close to hitting value. Dawson Knox was great, but David Njoku, another snowflake. So lots of snowflakes on this slate, and specifically in this game for some of the players that you were looking to target. And no really other stacks in this game. But yeah, this was obviously the top lineup, and you could see he went pretty heavy on Josh Allen. So, going to have a pretty low day. He just was nowhere near close to hitting value. So as far as user exposures, you could see he obviously was heavy on Josh Allen. So minus 2,700 out of 3,500 in the Milly. No surprise there. Kirk Cousins, he was over the field on Cousins. And then this is one thing I have noticed in the past few weeks with a lot of the top DFS pros, a lot of quarterbacks in their pool. So 12 quarterbacks used, full Fields fade, 70% Pierce actually in his lineup, as we'll get to, and then he faded Barkley and Monty as well. So that's obviously contributes to why this lineup didn't do very well. So Daniel Jones under the field there, under the field on Dak. And Daniel Jones had a pretty good day. So would have been probably a lot better for him had he had Daniel Jones in his lineups. But as far as running back, Dameon Pierce, 70%. So had a bad day, obviously. You go all in on a guy like Dameon Pierce, who at this point has a very questionable ceiling. And, he has a poor game. That's what's going to happen. Josh Jacobs was a good play, but really just too much Dameon Pierce. Joe Mixon, he was out with a concussion. So, yeah, these 2 players here basically just crushed the entire lineup, and then obviously had a lot of Josh Allen as well. Under the field on David Montgomery. So basically just faded that entire Bears game. Stephon Diggs, DPJ, and DPJ is great, but Cooper was getting all the touchdowns last week. So that's just how it goes. But not going to spend a whole lot of time here. Obviously, it's very apparent with playing Dameon Pierce, Josh Allen, and Joe Mixon, it was going to be a losing day. So let's look at some of the other top DFS pros, kind of see their strategy. So McLovin, number 1 in the world right now. So his lineups did a little better than Chipotle Attic. He had a Burrow lineup, and really, if you had Perrine, whatever his name is, this lineup would have done quite well if you had stacked Higgins and him with Burrow. Those were the +2 to have. Burrow had an exceptional day, 31 points. He was one of my plays of the week. I loved Burrow last week, as a way to get different, because obviously Fields was chalk, Allen was chalk, and Burrow had a great matchup. So Burrow plus Hayden Hurst, and brought back with Pat Freiermuth. And then he had Ramondre by himself, David Montgomery, and Darnell Mooney. So basically just had a team stack here without Fields, of course. So that was his top lineup. He obviously had some Allen. Interesting. He had Allen naked with DPJ and Njoku. No stack there. Same thing with Daniel Jones. Obviously, Daniel Jones is very much a running quarterback. He does pass, and Wan'Dale Robinson had a great day, as we'll see. But obviously, he does run a lot, doesn't pass the ball all over the field. So he's certainly a quarterback that's a feasible option. I've looked at several lineups this year. I believe he won a GPP ran naked earlier this year. But yeah, very low scoring day. And then some of his exposures, he did use a lot of quarterbacks. So I believe he had like 14 quarterbacks over the field on Lamar Jackson, Marcus Mariota, Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott. So had some fields, but was under the field on Fields. And just pretty flat across the board. So you could tell his strategy is just getting a good mixture of the various quarterbacks, about 12 of them, and probably going to be over the field on running backs. That's where he, running back and wide receiver, that's where he really had conviction on some of the players. Obviously, top two, not good, right? Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce. Mixon got hurt, Dameon Pierce. Jacobs was a good play. He had over 100 yards rushing. Ramondre Stevenson didn't quite get there. Barkley failed miserably for his salary. David Montgomery was a good play over the field there. Okay, so wide receiver, highest ownership exposures of the day. So Stephon Diggs, 44%, CD Lamb, 43%. And obviously, CD Lamb was nowhere close to getting there, as well as Stephon Diggs, even though he got a touchdown. Darnell Mooney, same thing. But obviously a lot cheaper than the other two options. So Terry McLaurin, there were touchdowns to be had in those games, but they were going to Pollard. They were going to Curtis Samuel. They were going to David Montgomery. So it just wasn't good enough. And then one thing I noticed about McLovin this week is he had 8 tight ends over 20%. Freiermuth, Jawan Johnson, Hayden Hurst, Tyler Higbee, Kyle Pitts, Dawson Knox, Greg Dulcich, Dalton Schultz. So several tight ends over 20%. There were some guys that he really liked and thought he was just going to mix it up with these guys, despite him having a rather large player pool. Just a lot of exposure there to 8 different tight ends. And very spread out on defense, which, makes a lot of sense because it's such a high variance position. You kind of want to avoid the chalk, and you're just trying to mix it up and be on the right side of a variance. So Utica. So he had top lineup: Daniel Jones, Darius Slayton, 165 points. An Amon-Ra bring back, some Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery. These guys were one-offs. Another game stack of T. Higgins and Pat Freiermuth. Had Dulcich as a one-off, and then Washington defense. So also had some Jacoby Brissett, DPJ. Brought back with Stephon Diggs, Kenyon Drake, Brian Robinson, and then Washington defense in a stack with Brian Robinson, David Montgomery, and Pat Freiermuth. So it did a little bit better than the other pros we've looked at so far. A Burrow Higgins stack. No Mixon to crush that lineup. Taylor, Montgomery, McLaurin, Robinson, Dulcich. So one thing you've noticed with a lot of the pros is that, they haven't been too big on the +2 stacks this past week, which really that was what won it. It was obviously just the wrong combination of players. Quarterbacks. You notice here, faded Fields. And that was a approach I took as well. And it was just because the long touchdown runs, that's kind of something that's not sustainable, despite him being such an exceptional athlete. It's not something that you can chase every single week. So you saw this past week, he still had a good game. He was running the ball, he was throwing the ball, but because he didn't have the really long 60-plus-yard touchdown run, he was he didn't get he had while he had a decent floor, he had 22 points. It's not the ceiling you're looking for to win a tournament, especially at 23% ownership. So it was an easy fade for a lot of guys. And unfortunately, they just didn't choose the right guys to play at quarterback. Otherwise, it might have been a much better day for a lot of these top pros. So Heineke, a lot of exposure to him, Hurts, some exposure there. Dak Prescott, obviously Prescott was a good play. Russell Wilson, a lot of exposure there. Broncos, good matchup, just didn't get it done once again. Surprise, surprise. Josh Allen, basically right on the field there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 quarterbacks in his player pool. And then really just with the running backs, you had to pick the right ones to have a lot of exposure to. So Taylor, pretty good day, but Joe Mixon, nope. Kenyon Drake, nope. Josh Jacobs, good exposure, not enough. David Montgomery, pretty good, but not really a lot over the field there. And then you have too much Barkley, too much Mixon. That's just kind of how it goes. Wide receivers, Nico Collins, touchdowns weren't there. Terry McLaurin, nope. Amon-Ra, it was a good play. The process was right. The results weren't there. So it was that sort of day. Higgins, sharp play. Cortland Sutton, decent day, not nearly enough. Stephon Diggs, just even with the field there. No Amari Cooper, basically 1%. He had the big day in Cleveland. And then, just under the field on CeeDee Lamb, and he had a bad day. But really, if you just did a full fade of CeeDee Lamb, you probably did a lot better. So, Dolchich, Higbee, Freiermuth, Hurst, Moreau. Just a lot of the same guys that most of the field was on. Lower on Monroe, but and then Knox and Schultz. Obviously, the field was on both of these players as well. Okay. So let's take a look at a couple more guys. Need lunch money. So his top lineup. Now, it's funny. I listened to a podcast recently where they interviewed Need Lunch Money, and he says he tends to change his lineups up regularly because he doesn't want other pros to catch on to what he's doing. So he may, something to keep in mind. He may do one thing one week where, he's getting a lot of exposure to a small player pool of quarterbacks and then completely flips it upside down the next week. Kind of keep his opponents guessing, right? And playing chess. So one thing to keep in mind going forward, he had a Kenny Pickett, Pat Freiermuth, T. Higgins lineup. So getting different, kind of like with Jacoby Brissett. Obviously, had the very big day, under 1% ownership here. 53% total ownership. Very, very contrarian lineup. Tony Pollard, Dameon Pierce, Devontae Adams, which it was just crazy to me. Devontae Adams had 1% ownership. I know it was a good matchup, obviously, but he's still Devontae Adams, and Broncos aren't a very good team. And all it takes is one play, which you saw in overtime. He certainly got there. Even then, he still had a pretty good day overall. Michael Pittman, Juwan Johnson, and then Houston Z. So he had a Pierce and Houston D stack as well in this game. 166. Another Kenny Pickett, Pat Fryermuth, brought back with Higgins. This time he had Singletary, Gibson, Adams, Pittman, Higbee. So a lot of the pros were doing the double tight end last week. I personally don't like it myself unless I have a stud in there, but obviously if you're paying up all the way at other positions, it certainly makes more sense, right? So Devontae Adams at 8,700, it's harder to play him unless you do like a double tight end if there's not really any value at running back like there wasn't last week. So this one we have Dak, Gallup, no bringbacks on the Minnesota side. Dameon Pierce, Drake, Adams, obviously, Campbell, Hurst, and Pollard. So yeah, we had Dak, Gallup, and Pollard. So Dak +2. And then it starts getting ugly here, but there's Wan'Dale Robinson made his way in there, only 4,600, 22 points. That is what you need. As far as his exposures, so 12 quarterbacks used. And like a lot of the other pros, he faded Fields. Josh Allen, 30%. So very high exposure there for a quarterback. 30% is high, very high. From what you see, most quarterbacks, it's going to be, anywhere from 10 to 20, 25%. So Marcus Mariota, Jalen Hurts was over the field there, getting at least single digit exposure to a lot of quarterbacks. And then obviously faded Fields. Also faded Saquon, faded Brian Robinson, saw that as bad chalk. He got a touchdown, but he obviously wasn't anywhere near the nuts lineup. Optimal lineup, I should say. Devin Singletary, faded him. Just about even with the field on Gibson. Montgomery, same. Same with Taylor, Ramondre. And then, the top backs that he chose to have exposure to, just none of them got there. So, not close. Same thing with Diggs. You go 48% on a guy and it's 8,300. He doesn't have a big day. You're pretty much just closing your laptop. And on that day, and with that said, we will close out the analysis of Eat Lunch Money's lineup for week 11. So last guy I want to look at, Osimo. Everyone knows Osimo as the GOAT. Okay, so his top lineup, and Osimo, I've noticed most of his top, it's pretty strange because his top lineups, even though the teams don't, overall, the lineup construction doesn't do very well and doesn't get there, they also tend to be his best cashing lineups, and they're always heavy stacked. And obviously, if that one game does go off, this is a lineup that can take down the whole competition, the whole contest. So he had a Daniel Jones plus Wan'Dale Robinson plus Isaiah Hodgins, and really Daniel Jones and Wan'Dale got there, but it was just Isaiah Hodgins and the on-run raw bring back that didn't get there, right? Josh Jacobs, pretty good day, 22 points, $7,500. Ramondre Stevenson, not enough. And then obviously Dolchich and Stephon Diggs, the same thing there. Washington defense smash. So 148 total points, 90% total ownership. And then you will see a lot of stacking with both of his, a lot of double stacking and skinny stacks. So he had a combination of both. And what was interesting about this is it's obvious he didn't just set a rule to do one or the other, or if he did, he ran batches, right? So the last lineup we saw Daniel Jones +2. This one we saw Daniel Jones +1. The same Amon-Ra bring back, David Montgomery, Kenyon Drake, Terry McLaurin, Tyler Higbee, CeeDee Lamb, and then Washington's D. This obviously was higher owned, 124%, 142 total points. More Daniel Jones, Wan'Dale, Amon-Ra. This one with Stevenson, Pittman, Hurst, Jacobs, Washington D. Minnesota D, rather. Carr, Adams, Moreau, Jacobs. So he had Carr +3, Cortland Sutton, Kendall, Hinton, bring back. So 5 total players. Hoping this game went off. It did not go off. It went to overtime, but even going to overtime, there was not nearly enough points being scored in this game. So, but had some right players, right? So Derek Carr, Devontae Adams smashed. Josh Jacobs, he almost got there too. He had a good day. Had he got a touchdown, would have been a much better day for him. But obviously, Foster Moreau, and just the entire Broncos side, just nothing there. So it didn't get there. 134 points, 66% total ownership. We'll look at some of his exposures here. So, quarterback. Full fade on Justin Fields. He was not anywhere there. Dak, under the field on Dak. Under the field on Burrow. He wanted to be over the field on Burrow. Josh Allen, over the field there. Wilson. Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was a good play. Mariota, pretty good play too. But not good enough, nearly. So, and then, Dameon Pierce, your top guy. That's going to be a losing day. So that's why, even though he had one of the better days for a top DFS pros and the Milly Maker, still was a losing day. Jacobs, Stevenson, Kamara. He was over the field on Barkley. So, that's not going to cut it either. Gibson was even on Montgomery just about. And then, luckily, to his luck, he favored or was under the field on Joe Mixon. So far as wide receivers, Amon-Ra, Stephon Diggs, Drake Landon, Kendall Hinton, Wan'Dale. So Wan'Dale, was really his best play from the wide receivers on the day. T. Higgins, obviously a smashing play as well. Over the field there, not a ton of positive leverage though. CeeDee Lamb under the field. And, that was a great play. Fading CeeDee Lamb. And also under the field on Dalton Schultz. So pretty much just faded that Dallas game, which really didn't hurt him because obviously the top guys who were the chalk failed. And then Pollard, who was very low owned, he didn't have any of Pollard, but only 5% of the field did, so it didn't hurt him that much. What really hurt him was the other plays, the Dameon Pierce, the Barkleys, the Josh Allens, the Stephon Diggs, and whatnot. And then, there was a few tight ends he was really in on. Tyler Higbee, Greg Dulcich, Kyle Pitts, Pat Freiermuth, Dawson Knox. And then just pretty flat there. Not afraid to eat the Pittsburgh D chalk, which they were very low price, so it makes sense. Houston. Over the field there, positive leverage, getting different. Wasn't scared of the matchup, I guess. Just trying to be on the positive side of leverage. So I think that's going to do it this week. We will take a look back next week. Of course, as we look to review the Milly Maker each and every week. By the way, we are doing a lot of content right now for Turkey Day. So DFS Army, if you are not a DFS Army subscriber, use code FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription. However, You're watching this on YouTube. We are going to be going live for our tournament tactics Thanksgiving Day special. You need to be a DFS Army subscriber. You need to be a VIP for that. So go ahead and sign up. Use code FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription if you want to get in on that GPP tournament tactics for the Turkey Day slate. We will see y'all next week. Good luck this week. Hope y'all kill it.